After the last video that I did, where I touched on the questions, is it arrogant and is it lonely to come to self-realization, to realize the self? And it raised more questions, so I'm going to address those because I think that they're good. I grappled with the same concepts along my journey, so I'm going to get into that. The first one was more of a comment, which was that perhaps the questions that this person was encountering are because of the level of awareness, the level of consciousness from which they are approaching the topic or the talk. And that is true. Early on in the journey, when we have sort of realized that what we're doing has not been sufficient in making us happy in a lasting way, or that it's brought quite a lot of suffering, and that we were now becoming open to hearing about other possible ways to live, or becoming open to the idea that our beliefs may not be true. When we're just starting to navigate this, just starting to open to it, we can often still have a lot of resistance when we hear new things, when those things differ with what we've heard for a long time or believed to be true for a long time. It can bring up anger, it can bring up judgment, lots of things, and that's okay. But yes, depending kind of how much you are living, how attached you are to the character you're playing versus the emergence of unbiased, loving, and open consciousness, it will affect how you see new concepts. The first question was, there seems to be a paradox in experiencing oneness with all things and in feeling the separation of being on a journey like this, feeling separate from other beings. And in the question was said as feeling or imagining oneself to be superior, sort of consciously more evolved or something to that effect. And this presupposes that that is what's felt. The ego will absolutely feel things like that. There are definitely pitfalls along a journey like this where you may become quite a bit more egoic because all you're doing is attaching new lessons to your sense of self. And so you say, look how smart I am. I can recite this new idea that sounds like I'm very kind or sounds like I'm very selfless. But as long as our intention is to bolster that self, we haven't grasped the heart of that lesson. So to experience oneness with all beings is to come home to who we really are. To experience separateness is to live as the separate self that we've believed ourselves to be through societal conditioning. And these two experiences can be had in alternation while you're on a journey like this. If you're not yet fully realized, you intellectually understand this truth, but you're not yet living as your true self full time. Your ego sort of peeps through all the time. You might have one moment of this sort of beautiful realization, and then the following moment you're back to wanting and feeling incomplete and being irritated. So the two can exist within the same 5 minutes, and the goal is always to become more of the oneness, and that is our core self. To experience oneness is to drop all belief, to stop laboring in the creation and the maintenance of a self is to be that which you effortlessly are. And what you effortlessly are is happiness and love. The next question at the end, to say that you are nearing or at the end of a journey does sound arrogant. I just briefly touched on this. In the question, it says to imagine oneself toward the end of their journey is appears to be arrogant, disembodied, disconnected, and superior. This is to see this through the lens of the ego. If you're still living life as an ego and yet calling yourself consciousness, it feels wrong. It feels bad. You're not going to intellectually, mentally embrace this. To get past the mental process, to not place as much value on the mental aspect, and to come to awareness, to consciousness, to an inner knowing, to intuition, and to inspiration. This is where we are able to understand that we no longer suffer without attributing this to some victory on the part of the small self. Heather, the character, was placed into life circumstances that could lead one way or the other constantly. And I kept taking the side of the small human being. Okay, I'm going to attach this belief to myself, even though I don't like how it feels. I'm going to hold the opinion that other people cannot be trusted, let's say, despite the fact that that feels bad and is false. It can't be verified. So as we hold these beliefs more and more, oh, that skirt is too short, and for some reason I have to be upset, I have to care. This is based on the belief that what I think about somebody else matters at all. Each of us is here as autonomous beings, projections of consciousness, to create as we see fit. And it's all based on the experiences that we've had and then the subsequent decisions. And so we're just sort of flowing with this karma, this cause and effect machine. It's like, it's almost formulaic, born into this family, has this sort of basic genetic makeup, holds this belief system, this happens, this reaction occurs, this happens, this reaction occurs. You're just sort of getting tossed around by life until you realize that you are, until you realize that you don't have to be, that is not you. This form, subject to life and death, subject to birth and death, is vulnerable. Who you really are is not. And that applies to everybody, not me. I am you. At my core, I am the same thing that you are. We are one. So there is no superiority and there is no disconnect. What we're talking about is the journey of the small self to become okay with differing from one's family and friends, from one's outer environment, and the feeling of loneliness that can occur on the path. When you're fully realized, when you live life as the true self, loneliness doesn't apply, because loneliness is a concept. It's a concept constructed by human beings to try to describe our surroundings as we see them. When we live as this limited self, when we sort of subscribe to the physics of all of this as being the truth, the ultimate truth, then life will appear to follow exactly what the mind thinks it is. There was an observation, a perception that to consider oneself at the end of their journey, or to consider oneself as knowing this one truth, is to discount all the wisdom contained within other religions and philosophies, and to miss what it means to be fully spiritually human. I'm not here to be human, or I'm not here to necessarily explore what it is to be human. I'm here to be happy. And being happy is returning to my natural, effortless state, the effortless state of my one true self, the one true self that we all are. Within that, I can certainly explore what it is to be human, but that's not my goal. That's not. Consciousness created this world of form to experience being what it is not, in order to understand more about what it is. And it's looking at itself through the eyes of form. Other spiritual traditions have a higher place of esteem in my eyes than ever before, because I no longer think that the religion that I grew up with is the one true religion. I now know that all religion, all philosophy, everything that we're all doing here is in the same effort. It's the same effort to be happy, to reach for wholeness outside of ourselves when it's actually inside of ourselves. That is most of the effort. Well, if we're talking effort, it's all effort is sort of in vain. Looking outside of oneself and striving towards something is the opposite of just being that. Allowing yourself to just be. We're always doing. And when you have experienced being directly, and then you experience the ego trying to take you back into doing, you realize it's not necessary. You realize, I don't owe anybody rent on this planet. I do not need to perform in any way. I do not need to produce outcomes for this world for my life to have been worth it. A lot of us feel really attached to productivity and to outward progress as this thing that gives life meaning. And the only reason we feel that way is because we're disconnected from the one thing that brings us actual lasting happiness and joy. This does not mean we need to live a life that's idle, just sitting there. It means that when we do, it comes from a place of non-attachment. We are not doing in order to sort of prove our worth or to show ourselves who we are. We're doing because we feel inspired to do, and because we are the creator. We are living knowingly as the creator of all of this, And humans are just an extension, little like mini creators from this one. And so we can play with that. And there was a comment that there is a sensing in the eyes and the voice of spiritual teachers, or maybe it was non-duality teachers. I'm not sure specifically what they were referring to, but there is a sensing in the eyes and the voice of a loneliness and a sadness which appear to be denied. So there's this perception that when a teacher, this is what I'm taking from this, what I'm imagining this may mean, is that when you see somebody not smiling, eyes kind of neutral, not pushing, under no pressure whatsoever to engage an audience, let's say, to accumulate likes, to play a character, the simple conveying of an inner knowing, this can appear very boring. When somebody sits completely still, it can appear that they're very rigid. When they may have a monotone delivery, that can seem sort of devoid of happiness, or that it must be very boring to be that person. I've seen a lot of critique of some of my favorite teachers in that way, and I used to see it that way too. But as we become the peace that we effortlessly are, we recognize that peace in others. The ego might resist it, might deflect from it, might mirror it, actually. So might project what is contained within that ego. If a person feels lonely, they may be more aware of loneliness in others, but also may see it where it is not, because that's where their attention is trained. I used to have a lot of distrust in teachers, because I couldn't believe that it was that easy, because I didn't want to have to change in order to be happy. I didn't want to drop beliefs. I didn't want to be in uncomfortable situations to question what I considered to be who I was. I didn't want to drop that identity. And so, although I experienced intense suffering, enough that I kept seeking, despite not enjoying these teachings and feeling very irritated about personal traits of these teachers, despite all that resistance, and despite still, there was a resistance, and there was also a knowing deeper. There was this thing that kept me seeking, coming back, and knowing that where I was at that time was not it. Over time, my resistance to the delivery methods and the personal traits of teachers diminished. And so now, experiencing as when you experience without opinion, you are able to take the message for what it is. And you are also able to recognize your resistance when it comes up and use that to ask where you are off track. Where am I creating opinions that are diminishing my willingness to be open to the message itself, or to the intention of the message, the intention behind the message? To sum this up, as consciousness, we are all whole and complete. When we try to be anything else, we are experiencing lack. When we place conditions upon our happiness, we are building walls between ourselves and the self we think we are. We don't need to go beyond thought directly. We can refine our thought so we can come to purify the mind, drop beliefs, drop opinions that are no longer serving us, that aren't true and are not serving us. And in being what remains, something has to fill that space, and that something is happiness. It is the effortless aspect of us that has been there the entire time. And that's what it is to come home to the self.